Flyover family, buckle up, because this is the Flyover Conservatives show.
It may or may not surprise you, but they've been coming after your children's minds for decades. We got some great tips on how to save them.
Is there hope for our three-letter agencies? Tonight, we have an FBI whistleblowers with some great ideas.
We all want to make wise choices with our money, so we got an economic update for you tonight.
All of this and more on the Flyover Conservatives show. Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values. Yay! Welcome! We are so excited to be with you tonight. If you're new to Flyover Conservatives, our slogan is Wake Up, Speak Up, and Show Up. We all wanted President Trump to do 80 million things to save our country. Would that have been freaking awesome?
Little Mike did even.
Yeah. But what we found over these last couple of years, what we really need is 80 million of us doing one thing every single day to save our own country.
And one of the challenges is the 80 million that need to be doing one thing. A lot of them have had little mind viruses that have been planted in their mind about what America's about, what are our history about, or even worse than negative things, sometimes just nothing put into it. We've seen videos where they're interviewing college students on campuses.
Who are like, history majors.
History majors, and they're like, hey, what country did we break away from and declare independence from? And they're like, China. And, and I know there's some selective editing on that and so forth, but the fact that they could come up with many of them, on the same college campus, it's interesting. And so that all is a result of what I would want to do if I wanted to take over a people group. I wouldn't go into the retirement homes. I would go into the youth, and I'd want to affect their thinking. And that's what's happened to us. We're going to play a short clip, and then we got some really kind of interesting things to share with you coming out of that. So check this out.
After 7 years of violent revolution, our American founders were well aware that political factions were most often used to divide and conquer the people. And they knew that the republic they created would only last as long as the people could remain educated. In 1816, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." By the end of the Civil War, the two-party system became the norm. The globalist system we face today was born. And the deliberate dumbing down of the American citizen began with our great-great-grandparents. In the late 1800s, the Skinner-Pavlovian method was brought into American schools by Johns Hopkins. These psychological methods allowed teachers the ability to program students' behavior in the same way that Pavlov did with dogs. In 1934, the Carnegie International Endowment for Peace published the Report on the Commission on Social Studies, which explicitly stated the goal of eventually taking away people's land, and noted that most people would obviously oppose this. The solution was to begin using the school system to recondition the minds of children. In 1976, the bicentennial year of the Declaration of Independence, 124 congressmen signed the Declaration of Interdependence, which stated that 2 centuries ago, our forefathers brought forth a new nation. Now we must join with others to bring forth a new world order. And it pledged to give children special attention in distributing a common education to suit their goals. By the 1990s, this globalist dumbing down system was perfected, and America began exporting it worldwide in what is known as outcome-based education. Starting in 2010, Common Core began in the United States. It outlined what students were expected to know at each grade level and enforced ways to assess those standards. Charlotte Iserby, author of The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, has traced most of this agenda stemming from the Order of Skull and Bones at Yale, through both Republicans and Democrats, 2 wings of the same globalist bird, which understood that dumbed down people have a base desire for a simple dualistic choice. In 1953, the Rockefeller Foundation funded the Robbers Cave experiment, wherein 11-year-old boys who thought they were signing up for summer camp were organized into two separate tribes and were manipulated into fighting each other, which was easily accomplished by having a single resource that the two groups competed for. The Henry Tajfel experiments of the 1970s showed that by simply dividing people into two groups, they would naturally identify with their own group and discriminate against the other. The basic ego mind is constantly making preferences. No matter how dumb you are, you have an opinion about everything. And if you can keep the population dumb enough and give them two parties to choose from, they will innately identify with one and despise the other. This allows the globalist system the cover they need to implement unpopular policies, such as a central bank digital currency, while we, the people, ignorantly fight each other. United we stand, divided we fall, and we've been falling for it for generations. The American people have been so thoroughly dumbed down that we think freedom is the ability to choose between two parties working for the same control system. And we have been made so weak that we are afraid to even discuss the option of violence, which is most often the only remedy for tyranny. But if we were an enlightened people, we could simply unite together as one and just say no to the tyrants. The answer to 1984 is 1776. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
I love Greg Reese, and you can find more of his work on band.video, and he has an incredible Substack, great writer, great thinker. Stacy's had learned this trick earlier in our marriage that if she wanted to go to dinner, she would create an illusion of choice for me, and she'd say, hey, would you like to take me to dinner on Thursday or Friday night this week? And I'd be like, well, Friday's probably the best. Perfect.
Exactly.
Where are we going? And I'd be like, oh, I guess this is happening. And so like that idea of the illusion of choice, she got two things. We did it with our kids when they were young, especially our daughter. She had strong opinions of what she wanted to wear. So we would put out a couple of options that were both good and let her choose what she wanted to wear of the options that were in. So that happens kind of around us. Now they've created a whole educational system around getting us to comply, not question, avoid the red marks. And it creates a bit of a pickle for us when we're wanting to share good ideas with somebody that doesn't have them, because a good idea next to a bad idea becomes self-evident. But if you cannot share the good idea to somebody who holds a bad idea and they've been programmed negatively, it's kind of hard to do.
Human nature is really interesting. If I'm to push against David, so put up your hand, David. If I'm to push against David, he naturally, without us even practicing that, will push back against me. People naturally resist. And so when we're trying to give people new information, or maybe we are disagreeing about something, David's natural reaction will be put up a wall and just resist anything that I have to say. And that's why I think a lot of times, when we've been trying to deliver information to people that we love, we can no longer come to family events, or we're not talking to family members. It's like, how is this happening? Our friends, we've lost friends in this process.
And you feel like if they would just listen,
exactly.
Like if they knew what I knew, then they would be on my side.
Yep. And it's very common. And so we wanted to give some tips tonight that we found to be really useful in talking to family members, talking to friends that have worked for us, and I think would work for you as well. So I think the very first thing that we learned is, instead of trying to give information to somebody, ask questions. So let's say that they're talking about something that's going on, asking a question, well, why do you think that's that way? Or, what's your thought on that? Because when we ask a question, it makes them think, and they're not putting up a wall.
And they're engaged in their thought process. And then the better the question, the better the result. The better address you put into your phone, the better directions it's going to give you more accurately. And so just simply leading people down a path of great questions. One, they're going to be engaged because not that many people ask questions and listen. And so they're going to be drawn to want to be in a conversation with you, because most people are looking at their phone or thinking about where they're going next. And so it makes you a better quality conversation, at the nail salon or at work, the water cooler, so to speak, or, it's your family, get together. So asking a good question, but it's good to start with, wow, that's really interesting. Why do you think that is? Yep.
It works out really
well. Even if you know why that is, or you think you know why that is, it never hurts to ask a question that maybe you already know the answer to just to allow them
You do that all the time.
Just to allow them to go through the process that you went through to get to the same conclusion.
That is exactly right. So just thinking about, like, if I'm wanting to get information to someone, the best way to do that is to ask them a question and then let them explore it themselves. And I really like when we do our interviews with Mel K, she gives a bunch of graphics out. So I don't know if you've seen our interviews with Mel K, but when you text the phone number 40509, text the word Mel, you get graphics, and you can text that to somebody and say, wow, this really jumped out at me. What's your thought on this? What do you think about this? When you do that, it then sends them down a rabbit trail, and they start looking themselves, which then they educate themselves in the process, and they never have a wall that they've put up of resistance.
Like, oh, I had no idea. And we've all seen something that you can no longer unsee once you've seen it.
Yes.
You know, and it might be a puzzle or a mystery, or you look at a photo and it's got an optical illusion, but you only come to that conclusion on your own, not because somebody told you what to look for.
That's exactly right.
So that's an important thing. Using tools.
Yes, using tools is very important. You know, it's interesting because even Jesus in his own community, in his own hometown, they did not follow him. They're like, nope, I know you. You don't. There's no way that you can be the son of God.
Least miracles, least everything.
Yep, in that area where he grew up, it's like, nah, there's no way. And so people that know you the most are never going to listen to you. Even the physicians and the doctors that we work with, if you talk to them, I bet if they would say, nah, my family doesn't listen to anything that I say. It's interesting how that happens.
It really is. And so the best way is to offer a third party, because if I say, Stacy, I know something that you should know, I'm implying what she knows is wrong or not as good as me or something. I'll say, I came across this piece of information that really made me think, check it out. I'd love to talk to you about it. Would you listen to this recording? I'm going to send you a clip. Did you see that thing in the news that I'm not even going to get into? It's too hard to explain. I'm going to send it to you. It's going to blow your mind.
So videos work great, especially if they're real short, little clip that they can watch that just makes them kind of put this mind virus in there. It's like, oh, it's planted there, and now it kind of works while you're not with them. Or it could be an article that you read, or it could be a meme. Or
I can't promise you that using a tool is going to open someone's mind and send them down a rabbit hole of learning. But I can pretty much guarantee you that it's not going to come from you. Mm-hmm. If sharing an idea from Thomas Sowell isn't going to open up their minds about economics, you're not either.
Right.
Okay. And so using that third-party tool is really the only thing that they'll kind of take down their guard and watch it. And then, so you open up with a question, and you might be like, hey, did you hear that Trump was actually the least racist president that's currently living?
What? Where
like,
did you get that information?
Hey, there's actually a kind of a left-leaning article that came out from Reuters, but Fox and everybody else is talking about. I'll send you both links. It's a study that they did. And I'm not even going to get into it, but you'll find it pretty interesting. Let me send you this link. It's pretty cool.
Okay, there's a key to what David did. Instead of him telling me everything that's in the article, he put out a bombastic, crazy statement, but he's got something to back it up and say, hey, you should check it out. Now, if you guys have not seen this article, it is very interesting.
It's interesting. And it's done by a study. I don't know if you say Reuters, how do you say that? Their organization. But he's the only living president that doesn't have a slave owner in his genealogy. Mm-hmm. And so, Obama, Carter, everybody else does, except for Donald Trump. So it's interesting, the label that got stuck on. So that's an interesting conversation starter. Throw it out, then send an article, or you could even do the same thing in social media. Hey, did you know this? And then put it down below.
That works
using
really
tools.
well. So how about a question about immigration? Oh, we should offer more people an opportunity to come to the United States. It's not fair to them when they live in a country that doesn't have the freedoms.
Most people feel that way. They're like, oh, but they're poor people with the same opportunities. Your family came from somewhere else too. Poor people from all over the world. They just want to come here for a better opportunity. There's a video that we play quite often on the show. We've shown it quite a few times, called the gumball experiment. It's got an economist, and he basically, every gumball is 1 million people in the world, and it talks about fixing poverty globally through immigration. So I would use that video. I would say, you know what? I came across it. It's really interesting. I've never seen a demonstration like this. Did you know that how many people in the world make less than $1 a day?
No.
It's crazy. I'm going to send you a video. I'd love to get your opinion on it. This guy's got some crazy statistics about immigration. Let me send you this video. And we'll put that video down in the links below today if you've never seen us show it in the past. It's a phenomenal example. The guy does lots of different versions of it. But that is a way.
It is. And the key to that, too, is just saying, hey, if I sent this to you, would you be willing to watch it? And then I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, if I send this, would you watch it? If I gave you this, would you? If I sent you the link, would you take a look at it? If I did this, can we talk about it tomorrow at lunch?
So hopefully this was helpful. It's been something that's really worked well for us. I really think it'll work well for you. If you try it, Put it in action. See if it works. So we are so excited to be with you tonight. We'll be right back.
Miss COVID.
I know. Dude, you know when I knew there was trouble? When anyone that came to our country didn't have to get a vaccine. And I go, if you're telling me I can't go to work, but everyone coming in doesn't have to get one, I go,
Well, once we found out, when Fauci said, okay, I'm sorry, if you've had 2 boosters and 2 vaccines, you can get and give COVID to another guy who's had 5 vaccines and 4 boosters. What's the difference between a vaccine and a booster? I don't know. It's just more vaccine, but booster sounds better. Anyway, a guy with 25 vaccines would get and give COVID to another guy with 25 vaccines. That's why I'm introducing the daily COVID shot. Every day you get a shot. By the time you get to your car, you got no immunity. But it's a beautiful 39 seconds.
All right, folks, the box fan plan is no longer needed. We're bringing the ReAwaken America tour Las Vegas, Nevada indoors, baby. We've got a climate-controlled, beautiful facility that we are building at the beautiful Craig Ranch, which is 7 miles north of the Trump International Hotel. So if you're there and you want it to go well and you don't like the box fan plan, I get it. We now have a climate-controlled indoor facility that will be constructed and built there at the Craig Ranch, 7 miles north of Trump International Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada. So stay at the Trump International, Las Vegas, Nevada, and then you'll be staying in a climate-controlled facility located there at Craig Ranch. And one good thing you can do, though, if you did buy a box fan, a great vocal exercise that I like to do before every show is this.
La la la, Luke, I am your father.
There is no reasonable doubt that President Biden was an active participant in an unlawful international influence peddling scheme. My name is Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, and whatever you may think about President Donald J. Trump or his recent federal indictment, the speed of the investigation and the breadth of the indictment is breathtaking compared to the inaction for comparable crimes allegedly committed by Hillary Clinton.
We did not find clear evidence.
The incredible slow walking of the investigation of Hunter Biden, and Attorney General Merrick Garland's refusal to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden's role in the Biden family's international influence peddling scheme. Does any reasonable human being believe that Joe never discussed Hunter's business with Hunter, or that Joe did not know anything about a scheme that so far has ensnared at least 9 close Biden family relatives? It was reported recently that Hunter will plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors and defer a gun reporting offense with no prison time, and the right to have his record partially expunged after 2 years. Good thing Hunter is a white dude, and oh yeah, being the son of a president also helps. It's not just a stark contrast between use of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, to go after 5 Trump associates, including yours truly, before FARA is ignored when exploring Hunter's activities for Ukraine and China, or the contrast between aggressive prosecutions of pro-life protesters compared to the pass given to abortion rights protesters, or the horribly disproportionate treatment of January 6 protesters compared to the left-wing protesters who destroyed billions of dollars of property and killed more than 24 Americans. Rather, it is all of these things. Either Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, and centrists should be subject to equally fierce investigations and prosecutions, or they should all be subject to neither. Either we have the rule of law or not. With the provision that every American is entitled to a presumption of innocence, unless of course you're a conservative who supports Trump, and much of what is known of the Biden family crime organization is alleged, there is powerful evidence that Joe Biden committed multiple felonies as a co-conspirator in an international Biden family fraud and racketeering scheme, regardless of whether he personally received bribes or not. This isn't over, and Americans of every stripe, faith, and class better wake up to the fact that we have 2 completely different sets of laws in America.
It's kind of funny having conversations with people, and everybody always likes to think, if I was alive in an era, I would have done that. I think that's why movies are so appealing. Watch a movie and you're like, oh man,
They're inspiring.
What would I do in this? Who would I be in this, movie? And how would I? Man, he's in trouble. How's he going to get out of this? What would I do in a situation like that? People think if they were alive in the Civil War, for sure I would have been an abolitionist. I would have. You never really know, because you're only in the moment that you're in. But you can't kind of test of what do you do when you come across a tough situation and it's against the grain. Do I say something or it's kind of?
Are you going to be a Bonhoeffer?
Kind of turn my head and go, wait, we've seen nurses, doctors, every different profession. A lot of them just, hey, I was following orders. We did a video recently. Somebody released a video. They called the floor they were on in the hospital the killing floor.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Because of the hospital protocols. It's like people weren't speaking up. And so when you see somebody that does do it, it's all the more valuable. And it's a rare thing.
True.
And we've got a guest that's doing that today. He's author of a book called True Blue. He's an opinion writer. He's a former state and federal law enforcement officer and FBI whistleblower in 2022, Mr. Steve Friend.
Yay!
Thanks, guys, for having me today.
Well, welcome
welcome
to the
to
Flyover
the
Conservative
show.
Podcast. It's an honor to have you on. We've been watching, clips of you with Jim Jordan, and you've been in some tough situations that you probably never thought you'd see yourself in. And they say tough times don't build character; they reveal it. And I tell you what, you're a stand-up great guy and a great American. I just want to start out with that right out of the gate. Thank you for what you've done. If it was easy, there'd be 1,000 of you.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it was just sort of a situation I found myself in. I didn't really seek it, but I think that it's I wouldn't have changed any decisions I've made so far.
Let's go back to 2022. We're looking at about 9 months now that you became a whistleblower against the FBI. Tell us about that. Tell us about that time and what kind of made you like, I can't do this. I'm not going to move forward any further. I have to blow the whistle.
Well, flashback a little bit before that, I spent my first 7 years in the FBI on Indian reservations, and that was important because I arrested 150 violent criminals and opened about 200 cases and got really familiar with the way the FBI does things. Transferred to Florida in 2021 to work child pornography cases, and then eventually was volunteered to work on domestic terrorism cases and told that child pornography was no longer going to be a priority for us.
Whoa.
So that was the first sort of red flag that I got for where the FBI's priorities are now. But team guy, just want to be professional. And if there's a legitimate threat, I'm going to work at it. And went to work on domestic terrorism cases. And that primarily meant January 6 cases. So in my office, most of those cases had already been worked before I had arrived, and they were just kind of sitting idly. And when I got my eyes on them, it was very apparent to me that the FBI has departed from the way that it's supposed to be carrying forward their investigations, and then just doing my due diligence and critical thinking, the things that I've been trained to do and done my entire career, really figured out what the reason for that is. And that ultimately culminated with me coming forward last summer before my office was going to be arresting several individuals for their actions on January 6th because of my concerns the way the cases were being managed, and then also the force that we were going to be using to bring them into custody.
Give the listeners kind of a scope of the amount of just manpower, man hours that were diverted from many different things to the January 6th investigation. Because you look at some of these dropped balls, that's a big one. Child pornography.
Child pornography?
I think you can kind of almost define the caliber and quality level of any culture based on how they treat and protect their children. So if we're going to drop that ball and put it towards that, what kind of efforts, what did that look like on a full scale project?
Well, certainly time is a finite resource, and the FBI doesn't have unlimited quantities of that. So it's really about how they move their personnel around to focus their work efforts. And certainly right after January 6th, I know there was a lot of man hours additional to what you regularly see in the FBI spent on working on January 6th, but just diverting resources from one to another. In my case, I was in the Jacksonville field office, and there was a child pornography squad that was multiple agents that was situated 90 miles to my north, and I was operating by myself in Daytona Beach. And we all kind of, if we needed each other, we were there, but we were all sort of performing the same sort of work function. But that squad entirely was broken down. and diverted to other needs that the FBI saw as being a higher priority. And then I was voluntold to work on domestic terrorism. And that was just one small example. And you look at how people were summoned to go to headquarters and for temporary assignments, 30, 60, 90 days to assist on the task force that was there. They were pulled off of the work that they were doing. So clearly the FBI, and all you have to do is look to what the executive managers are saying with regard to January 6th, where they're saying that this is our 9/11. This is the most important case in the history of the agency, and even the president saying that January 6th was worse than the Civil War.
Unbelievable.
Because it's something I think just to the, just an untrained observer, if you take a look at that, you got, I don't know how many people there, 500,000, was there 1 million? I don't know. It seemed like if it was an intended, planned, orchestrated coup and they got in so easily, it seems like they probably would have actually occupied it, not walked around, took selfies and exited on their own free will. If that's the toughest thing our country ever faces, we're in a pretty good world. If that's the worst thing that we have, foreign or domestic, to worry about, this is a pretty benign planet we're living on.
Agree. And we're all very fortunate to live in this country because it is so safe. Now, there's a political narrative, though, that our ruling elite want to put out there, that domestic terrorism is this rising nationwide threat. And in order to create the statistical narrative to generate that, they have taken this January 6th case, and it's been a boondoggle to further that out there. So January 6th is one case with however many subjects need to be investigated for whatever actions that they perpetrated that day. It should be run from Washington, D.C. However, the FBI has decided to open a separate case for every single person that was there that day. And then not only on paper run them from Washington, D.C., they were going to spread them to wherever they live. So I live in Daytona Beach. If somebody happened to walk into the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and they were being investigated, that case is assigned to my office in Daytona Beach. So now there's this huge rise in domestic terrorism stats that we see in Daytona Beach and any other city across the country, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Sacramento. And the president, the attorney general, the director of the FBI, anybody can stand up at the lectern and say, domestic terrorism is spiking around the country. We have thousands of terrorists around. And what they're not telling you is all those stats are manipulated from January 6th. And it's people that were walking through a public building to redress their grievances in front of Congress, as the First Amendment is supposed to entitle them to.
How about quotas? Can you talk a little bit about that, for quota for the FBI and bonuses?
It's a system that the FBI implemented about 10 years ago. And I got into this a little bit in the hearing when I testified in front of Congress. It's called Integrated Program Management. It's been around for 10 years. Think of it like the traffic cop with a ticket book. It is a quota system that the FBI sets for each of its field offices every year. And that is the number of cases it has to open, arrests, tools. And what it has led to is the work smarter, not harder, and an inverted incentive structure for people. And it is tied to not only the budget for the FBI. So Christopher Wray can stand in front of Appropriations Committee and say, we have 2,700 open domestic terrorism cases when they're all trespassing from the Capitol. But there are senior executives in the FBI that, because those numbers were spread around and the wealth was shared, we have $30,000 to $50,000 bonuses hitting their bank accounts. And that is not what law enforcement should be about. We don't work off of a quota system that way.
Wow.
I think people feel a little bit like dealing with the FBI now. They can investigate a person in order to find a crime, not really trying to solve a crime that happened to lead them to a person. And, while you want criminals, you want things to go bad, you sort of feel like this vibe that you would have had in any, I don't know, scary movie, or whatever, or a negative point throughout history where the people literally lived in fear of being listened to, watched, and in fear of their government versus the government there to protect the people from enemies.
Yes, and I think it's derivative of how the FBI has evolved from a law enforcement agency to now an intelligence agency that is trying to hit its quotas and open its cases. And the thing about the intelligence cases are there's really not an end to them. So they're always looking for new targets to spin up new investigations so they gain more intelligence, so that they can gain more intelligence and open new cases and gain more intelligence. And the FBI and the DOJ are also very content now to weaponize their interpretations of laws, and as well as seeking out using process crimes to pursue people that they deem to be problematic. You just take no other better example than Mike Flynn. Mm-hmm. Now, the FBI and James Comey said he directed two agents to go and interview Mike Flynn in the hopes that he would lack candor and they could open up a case on him. And that's a felony to lack candor with a federal agent. So they found the man and looked for a crime. That's very Joseph Stalin. That's very KGB. That's very Stasi.
Yeah, that's a Stalin quote, you know, show me a man, I'll find you the crime, you know, and I mean, that seems to be the vibe here. As we wrap up, what do you have to say to people that are sitting there and they feel this adversarial, relationship? Is there hope for the future? What would need to happen if you had a magic wand and people are going to pray like, hey, God, bring truth and justice to our country? What would that look like in the future?
We need to small r Republicanize the way that we do federal law enforcement in this country. And I proffer this. Let's eliminate all armed agents from the FBI and any other agency in the federal government. And they can have an investigative arm, but they can't enforce it. Force them to partner with local police departments and sheriff's offices and make those deputies cross-deputize as federal agents and give them the arrest authority as a final stopgap measure. Think of it the way that we used to elect senators in this country, where they came from the state houses and they were most responsive to what the state's needs were. They knew the Main Street. Similarly, the deputies and the police officers, they know the Main Street problems, they know the usual suspects. And should the FBI or any other federal agency get out of line and become oppressive, that sheriff, that police chief can be the final stopgap and say, I understand you have a case against this person here. I don't agree with it, and we're not going to enforce that.
Man, let's talk a little bit as we're closing about your book, True Blue. So you can go to Amazon to get your book, True Blue. Tell us about your book.
That's a great looking cover.
That is a great looking cover.
Flyover family, you would look better as a patriot having that book on your coffee table.
Yeah, no
look
doubt
at that
about
thing.
it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a memoir of my experiences as youth and growing up and sort of the principles that have guided me, as well as reflection on the stories that I had as a police officer, as an FBI agent, and then got into the real nuts and bolts of my whistleblowing complaint, and as well as the fallout from that. And it is unredacted, much to the chagrin of what the FBI demanded of me, where they said they wanted all the information I was providing about my whistleblowing and about the meetings that I had with executives where they told me that my oath didn't matter, that I needed to be devoted to the FBI above oath of office. And I'm just not willing to do that. I think transparency is entitled. The American people are entitled to transparency. Sunlight's the best disinfectant.
Man,
I know it's a really
true.
well-written book. It's well-reviewed. The foreword is by Miranda Devine, incredible writer. I'm not sure your connection there, but that's some high-caliber, super mental horsepower you got involved in your project. Flyover family, I encourage you to go grab a copy of this book. I guarantee it's something that will encourage you. You need these stories around because you don't know when you end up in a situation where your character is tested. It's better if you have a history of stories to pull from, if you have a mental and emotional vocabulary to pull from when you're in a tough moment. It's good to fill your thoughts, your home with your children, have these stories at your dinner table because they are more rare than they should be.
For sure. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you also for being brave in this time and stepping out and being like, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. I'm going to use my voice. Thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share my story with your audience.
Do your feet ache and throb in pain with every step you take every day of your life? Well, kiss those days goodbye with slippers from MyPillow.com. How about that flimsy, flat little excuse for a pillow that's nothing but 8 hours of disappointment, causing you pain in your neck every single night? You can wake up with nothing but butterflies and rainbows around your head with a MyPillow pillow. Those hardwood floors hurting your old bones? No more with a MyPillow dog bed. Are your towels worn thin, flimsy, more patchy than Joe Biden's memory? There's nothing better than absorbent towels from MyPillow.com. For all of these products and more, go to MyPillow.com and use promo code FLYOVER for up to 66% off.
Hey, Flyover family, we have a brand new sponsor for the Flyover Conservative show, Heaven's Harvest. So exciting.
We've been really excited about this partnership because for about 2 years now, our level of awareness has increased on things that can go wrong in the world. Not just the big major stuff, but ice storms in Texas and things that, you don't plan on. And I guess a level of personal responsibility of like, hey, we have people that we care for that depend on us. And so we've been tiptoeing into it, but it's overwhelming. It's like, what do I do next? And so we've made little steps in that process, but we've been asking everyone we know, everyone we respect in this space, hey, who's a good supplier of things? Who has food that you would actually eat if you had to, that without eating styrofoam that you'd be gagging down if you lost a bet? Like real actual food that if you put it away for storage, that when it came time to do it would be palatable, as well as heirloom seeds. A lot of the seeds nowadays, you plant them, they're not you can't reproduce with them. They've been genetically modified and really messed up. So we've been asking people we really respect. Somebody we get a lot of advice from personally, and we've made a lot of small moves in our life from, is Seth Holhouse with Man in America, and we kind of went off of his lead as well as some others. And so we are super excited about this partnership because they're willing to give a massive discount to the Flyover family.
That's exactly right. When you go to heavensharvest.com and you use promo code Flyover, you get 10% off. What a great deal. We are so thankful and excited about this partnership. You know what time it is. It's time for an economic update with Dr. Kirk Elliott. Yay!
How are you all today?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you as always, and we're never at a dull moment for things to talk about.
I'm praying for it. I'm looking for. I love boring. I'm praying.
Kidding.
I'm praying for that, but the news cycle just doesn't really allow it because there's people behind the scenes, especially unelected officials that are busy behind, just always stirring the pot,
doing nefarious stuff.
Always nefarious stuff. Always, it seems. But there's a lot of like good shows on Netflix and TV. And
yeah.
People who are more interested in celebrities or submarines than they are about that.
There is a ramping up a speed of all things. There is all this happening. I was listening to Glenn Beck talk the other day, and he had taken a vacation and had come back, and he made this comment. He said there was a producer. He says, they started this in 1996. Their network there. He goes, we used to try to fill a 2-hour block. We would shoot to find 10 to 12 news articles, that we could cover to fill it. And he goes, it was hard. He goes now with his team to come up the same window, they have 50 to 70 news points that they could hit in that same block. Wow. And they got to narrow it down from there because there's so much happening. Like there's an acceleration to all things you see right now. It used to be like something that would happen economically to impact things, but it was like over a decade where you look back as like, 20 years later, we're kind of feeling the impact of that decision. Things are like, it happened in the morning, you're impacted by lunch. It's like so fast right now, the news cycle and things that are happening. It's crazy.
It is absolutely crazy. And if you were to ask me like 3 weeks ago, which you did, you always do, it's like, hey, what's going to happen with the next rate hike, right? It's like, oh yeah, like close to 100% chance they're going to raise it another quarter of a point because inflation is so high. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And then when they lowered it to 4% from in the fives, it's like, man, prices didn't go down 25% in the last month. I mean, I go to the grocery store every week. I go to the gas station all the time. I mean, nothing went down 25% in the last month. So obviously they're cooking the books. They're lying about it. But when they did that, I realized, okay, I know why they did that because they need to pause the rate hikes and they can actually use this as a storyline to say, Biden's winning the war on inflation. Look, inflation's coming down, but they're not. It's just they're fabricated, cook the books numbers. It's not going down. It's going up, or else our wallets would tell us it's actually coming down. But interest rates are going up so high that they're afraid if they go up any higher when America's living at the margin that people aren't going to spend anymore. And then it's really our goose is cooked and the economy's dead. But The converse is also true. If they pause rates, which is what they ended up doing, and I knew that they were when they lowered rates to the inflation rate to 4%. It's like it's not there. But if they pause it, inflation is going to persist and it's going to go up a lot, right? Because they paused and they didn't even slow it down this month. So my prediction is the next cycle, next month and the month after, they're going to have to raise rates yet again, because what we're seeing is massive amounts of rate hikes around the world. So the Bank of England, it's not just here in America. The Bank of England has inflationary pressure. So does every country around the world. As a post-COVID world, the government mechanism was to just print money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Money. So that causes inflation. So the Bank of England, they shocked the world with a surprise 50 basis point hike, which is 0.5%. They weren't expecting 0.5%. They were expecting 0.25%. Well, where else in the world did they actually raise rates? So the United Kingdom, obviously 50 basis points, more than expected. Switzerland, the most stable economy in the world, right? They raised rates by 25 basis points or 0.25 point. Norway raised rates more than at 50 basis points, which is 0.5%. That was more than expected. The U.S. paused because of political reasons, right? They have to actually have a win in their narrative because we're entering into an election season. Now Hunter and President Biden, the family is like getting into all the bad news.
Yep.
Like, look at all this corruption that surrounds this family. So let's at least show them that we're winning the war on inflation, something, anything, but yet Turkey, this is a wild one to me. The worst rate hike I've ever seen ever. They raised rates 650 basis points, which is 6.5%.
Wow.
Raised. It's now up to 15% in Turkey. And people say, well, Kirk, that's terrible. It's like, I've seen this before. All of us have. Because in 1983, interest rates were 18% in America. So what if Turkey's today is 15%? Why did rates have to get to 18% in 1983? Because inflation was at 14.3%. They needed to slow down that inflation. Right. The only way to do that is to have rates higher than the inflation rate. So even Turkey raising it 6.5% up to 15% isn't like unheard of. It's like we did it. Mm-hmm. We did it in the early 80s, right? So you're seeing all this stuff. But if you listen to the mainstream media news long enough, well, you learn that there's submarines sinking and all kinds of stuff. But if you were to listen to the economic news coming out from Biden, you think that they're winning. You think that they're winning because inflation's coming down, jobs are being created. Jobs are not being created. Inflation is still persisting. And so there's a big leading economic indicator report that kind of tracks all the economic indicators. Okay. Number of new mortgage applications, the gross domestic product here, what our debt levels are, how many people are actually applying for loans, what the student level debt is, what construction costs are. I mean, everything. CPI, mm-hmm. It's like all of them put in one index, right? This index is down now for the 14th month in a row. And the projection are it's not going to slow down that decrease. So it's like, okay, nothing really means anything until you put it into perspective. It's like, what does that mean? It just means we're down 14 months in a row. No, it means that in the history of America, we've never had a 14-month span where it's been this bad, that's consistent.
Wow.
Great Depression, right? So this is the news. It's not really making the news. It's like even in a prolonged economic downturn like the Great Depression, you'll have 1 month in there that something pops up. It's like, great, that's cool. And then it keeps going down. It's like, ooh, that was a trick. They tricked. Right. This one, boom, 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 just down, 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 14 months in a row. This economy that Biden is creating, it is so bad. And I know some people are going to throw rotten tomatoes at me. It's so bad that you would have to almost have no other rational reason for it other than it's planned.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nobody that's stupid.
Right.
Nobody's that stupid. These people are PhD economists. I know how to get one of those things. It's not easy, right? So people aren't stupid. They're just evil. They just have a different agenda than what we have. So when you've got that many months of downturn in a row, it's almost like it's planned, because you could do something that could fix it. Okay. You could do something that would create jobs. Okay. Let's slow down the inflation rate a little bit. Let's stop printing money, or let's inject more money in, or let's change the reserve requirement at the banks. Or you could, just do a lot of different things, but they're not. They're not. But they have a new banking system, a new money system that it's on its way, that people are going to need to want. The only reason people would want something that gives up all of their freedoms is if it's so bad in the world around us that they have no choice but to accept it.
Wow.
Well, that's the only way to get you to do something. It's like, it's like, a medicine to something that's terrible. I mean, it's like nobody would want to go through chemotherapy if they didn't have cancer with the threat of dying. It's like, that I don't want this, but I don't want that. It's like, it's the only way you would enter into something that's very hard and is kind of at gunpoint due to a circumstance. And that's obviously what they're creating.
For sure. It is. It absolutely is. But here's where there's hope. It's like, I don't care what they say. I really don't. I mean, what they say creates the lay of the land that we're living in, right? But all we have to then do is use wisdom and discernment and creativity that God gives each and every one of us and identify it. Once you identify it, you can act accordingly. If you're too consumed by celebrities and what they're wearing and what houses they're buying and how they decorate and everything else, well, then you probably don't care and you're going to get what you get, right? But pay attention to the trends that's happening. We can always counteract that with an opposite reaction, right? So they want us to operate out of fear. This is how the enemy operates. He wants to get us so consumed with ourselves or with the sadness of the world that we're living in or this and that we just don't act. But you know what? We can do the opposite. This is why I've been shouting from the rooftops and why I will continue to do so until there's nobody else to listen, even if one person is listening, because it's that important that people get out of the banks, get out of their toxic assets. Just like on the last show that we did, probably the most important show that I think we've ever done, where it talked about the Bank of International Settlements, the United Nations directives, the Federal Reserve and the FedNow app, and how they're coming after your money, right? So
with it being urgent in July.
Urgent in July. I mean, this is the first time I've ever had urgency. And it was an urgency in July because it's not some date that I'm making up. It's the date that they're saying that they want everything implemented and marketed and moving forward and full adaptation of these things is like July 18th. It's like, wow. Just because they say it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get it, right? It just means you could have a groundswell of opposition and it doesn't happen. But here's where we need to look at what they say, look at what the plans are. Their globalist agenda is not our globalist agenda, even though they name these documents our common agenda. It's like, it's not. It's not ours, and there's nothing common about it. Right. This is a changer for the rest of the world.
It's just an agenda.
Our lives. It's an agenda.
Yeah, man. All right, Flyover family, you can go to flyovergold.com. When you do, it's a great landing page. There's great information there, but when you scroll down to the bottom, there's a place to fill out your information. When you do that, it sets up a free consultation. Someone from Dr. Kirk's team will make that happen to help answer your questions, to help to give you great advice, and then you can make decisions from there. It doesn't cost you any money whatsoever, or you can call 720-605-3900. Again, 720-605-3900. Don't wait. Do it today. You will be glad
you will be. They're great people. You'll enjoy yourself when you talk to anybody on Kirk's team. They are the best, and they'll make you feel safe. You can actually go to bed, exhale, and not have to worry about this stuff because you have a blueprint to stay out of this storm. So, Dr. Kirk, thank you so much for your time, man.
Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
You know, times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
We will shut you down. We will cite you, and if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
God actually spoke to me. He spoke about sacredness. He said to me, Kim, what I place in many, many people is sacred. And if anybody touches what is sacred to me, then it is the end for them. So what I've done in the United States of America is sacred. And there are people on every side that are trying to destroy what I deem sacred. And it's not going to happen.
This is the definition of criminal conspiracy, racketeering, and collusion. This is not a theory. This is evidence.
Because I have upheld this country to spread a light to the rest of the world. When you choose to go against the sacred thing that God put into the very heart and the soil of this nation, this was sacred to God.
This ReAwaken tour is literally what it means. It has reawakened the American heart.
Hello, Flyover family. Join me every Wednesday for the Prophetic Report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical, we're hearing from military intelligence, we're hearing from the financial world, we're hearing from mainstream media, but the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11. So join me every Wednesday at 11:11, and if your friends need a little help, tell them about it.
It's important. It's important to kind of keep good stuff coming into your mind and in your body and your home and your conversations. And another thing that does that, we talked earlier about tools that you can share. One that's been a big one that's supposed to be for our kids and grandkids, but it's kind of been for us, is the Tuttle Twins books. Now
they're so good.
Their cartoons and all those things are incredible, but they got a series of books. There's probably 12 of them. Like, we're getting ready to have G. Edward Griffin on the show, who wrote a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, but it's like this thick. Well, I'm preparing to talk to him. I don't get time to read that whole book.
I'm time for that.
I'm going to go through the Tuttle Twins version of it, but it's amazing. And as a tool, if you want to give a set of these to, if your children are like, man, I'm not sure what their thinking is, but they got kids and you want to kind of get good ideas into their world, a set of the Tuttle Twins books is
brilliant.
a great guerrilla warfare
It's a
kind
tool.
of book. They got an economics one based on, it's called The Miraculous Pencil, that goes through all the details, everything that goes into making a pencil, and it kind of helps you understand capitalism, the free enterprise system, manufacturing, what it takes to go into there. And they're really well done. They're well illustrated. They're kind of fun books to read with your grandkids, or you can sneak away and read them yourself. And
look really smart.
And you'll be surprised what you learn. But if you go to flyovertwins.com, it just gets you into their landing page. You put in promo code Flyover. They give you huge discounts, and it's a great organization. Connor Boyack, the owner of the company, did this as like a passion project. He's been on the show a few times. We're going to have him on again, I think, next month. But I love what they're doing because like the left did, they try to get into the children's minds. We can do it with good things as well. They got one that's called The Golden Rule, just great books with good character, good morals.
So go to flyovertwins.com. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We bless you. We bless you to realize you were born for such a time as this. We bless you to realize your future is brighter than your past. And we bless you to wake up, speak up, and show up.
We'll see you again next time. Thank you so much for sharing this episode with your friends. Peace out.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Flyover Conservatives podcast with David and Stacy Whited. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment below. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's podcast, share with those who came to mind. Be blessed and make it a great day.